another episode of Bios to Books. I'm your host, Dan Davidson. I usually interview a self published author or a new author. Sometimes I get lucky and I even get to interview a best selling author. However, today we're doing something a little different. I will be talking about my co author and lifelong friend, Rich Marcano. Sadly, Rich passed away suddenly on November 16th, 2023. It was a shock to everyone who was near and dear to him. Therefore, I dedicate this show to Rich and his family, his lovely wife, Frances, and his children, Erica and Lance. Rich, Richard, Rick, Ricky, Emberado, and Mac, all are names he would answer to, used by many of his friends throughout his life. I myself was partial to Rich. He was loved and respected by all of them. I will mention all the books we wrote together, but this show is not about selling books. It's about honoring a dear friend who will always remain close to my heart. Before discussing my friendship with Rich, I want to offer some of his background. Richard Marcano was born in the South Bronx on January 10th, 1945. He lived in a tough neighborhood and proved to be a good friend and a worthy opponent when the situation dictated it. Rich was not a fan of school, but that didn't mean he didn't like to learn. He loved to read books and write stories and poetry. He loved boxing too. He fought the Golden Gloves. The book we were working on before his untimely death depicts life in the South Bronx in the 1950s and 60s. The book is titled Shadows from My Past. The narrative is fiction, but most of what is described in the story, Rich saw, heard about, or in some cases, experienced growing up during that time. In many cases, the characters are composites of people Rich knew back then. It will be a challenging read for some people because of the violence and overall uncivilized behavior of the different gangs involved in the story. I will add a proper warning when it's ready to be published. Sometimes as writers, we are forced to step outside our comfort level to write the story that needs telling. Rich and I discussed the difficulties of writing this story at length and agreed that it needed to be said honestly and completely. I hope to have Shadows from My Past published sometime in 2024. I first met Rich in 1963 in the Air Force when we were stationed at Osan Air Force Base in South Korea. Rich was serving his first year, and I was in my fourth and final year. Ironically, Rich was already at Osan when I arrived there. So he kind of had a head start on me and knew more about the place than I did. We hit it off right away. Both being New Yorkers certainly helped. A lot of people had a problem with New Yorkers and their attitudes. We never disappointed them. We had last seen each other in 1965. I was now a civilian, and Rich was headed to Texas to finish out his enlistment. It would be more than 45 years before we hooked up again in Las Vegas. After a big hug, we sat down for a few beers and revisited our past in South Korea. Beside great memories, we decided to write a book about those days, and we called it Butterfly Wish. It was our first collaboration. I had originally written it as a screenplay, but Rich talked me into converting it into a book. I had my doubts, but we went ahead anyway. Writing the book was a bittersweet for both of us. Some things over in Korea needed to remain personal, but we tried to paint an honest picture of what went on over there. We both got in our share of fights over there, but always had each other's back. What separated Rich from most of the GIs was his determination to assimilate with the locals, eat their food, and learn their customs. He even went as far as volunteering as a local orphanage. Most of the other GIs were more interested in getting drunk and raising hell, me included. A lot of us found companionship with the local ladies in Chico Village. Sometimes it went as far as becoming a serious relationship. I became involved in what I would call a very awkward and troublesome relationship myself. Rich had my back on that too. Rich never allowed himself to get taken in by the ladies. He was friendly but cautious. He never placed himself in a compromising position. I think that's why the locals liked him so much. He respected their traditions and values. When Butterfly Wish was published, neither Rich nor I had high expectations for it to become a bestseller. Although most reviews were positive, we knew we had written a book for ourselves, a journal through our early life that would remain with us forever. We will probably never break even because of the high cost of editing, publishing, and marketing the book, but that doesn't matter. We told our story and it will be out there forever. After Butterfly Wish, I tossed Rich another idea for a book. I was hesitant about it because it meant we would be changing genres from historical fiction to the world of paranormal and time travel. I had initially written the story as a screenplay too, but my wife had urged me to convert it into a book. Rich was entirely on board with the idea, and we began our work on our book twice upon a time. Again, we didn't have a bestseller, but it did sell a couple of hundred copies on ebook and softcover. It still sells a few now and then. Sadly, we didn't break even on that either, but we did learn the challenges of writing something paranormal. I give sci-fi and paranormal authors a lot of credit. It's not the easiest genre to work in. Rich helped out a lot with the research on time travel. Oddly, our third book came about by accident. Rich and I were discussing reincarnation. Is it possible? We researched some cases of people claiming reincarnation, and the idea came up for our next book. We decided on a 15-year-old boy in the present day, believing he was a reincarnated soul of a soldier in World War II. The title of the book was Soul of Juby Walker. Most people would love to know they would be immortal and live forever. It makes an excellent premise for a story. Once again, Rich did the research. We learned a lot about the journey of his soul. Whether we believe it or not is not important. I often get asked about how difficult it is to co-author a book with someone who lives 2,500 miles away. If you have a connection that Rich and I had, it's not complicated. It may take a little longer to complete the manuscript, but Rich and I rarely disagreed on anything. Our fourth book came about after I dreamed about teenagers growing up in the 1950s and around where I spent my teenage years on Long Island. Rich and I have always been partial to the 1950s. We remember the good times and the bad. So Gently Goes the Hummingbird is an easy read. We enjoyed writing it. We also wrote a Christmas story that just came out in time for Christmas this year. It's a heartwarming story with characters both Rich and I like a lot. I think we can relate to the protagonist in it quite easily. It's only available in ebook right now, but it is out. I mentioned at the beginning of the episode our latest project we were working on, Shadows from My Past. We were also working on another book that was loosely based on my experiences in the Air Force when I was stationed in Ohio before I got my orders for South Korea. It was originally planned to be our second book, but for some reason, I kept putting it off and putting it on the back burner, opting for another story. I hope to finish it this year and hopefully publish it. Its title is Tasting Raindrops. Richie's talents went far beyond writing novels. He wrote poetry as well. He always said he enjoyed writing poetry, but lacked the confidence to pursue it. He told me he did did have one poem published, but it got lost in time, I guess. Rich did write 2 lines of poetry for our book, Butterfly Wish. It appears near the beginning of the book. I like to quote it. Haunting memories sear the mind, unfulfilled love left behind. Perfect quote for this book. Yes, that's right. The young man who fought in the Golden Gloves, the tough guy who always protected the underdog, was a poet. And although I only read bits of his poetry, I think he was damn good. Some of my family was fortunate enough to meet Rich when he came to Las Vegas. My wife, one of my sons, and a couple of grandkids. They were fascinated with the stories he told and still talk about him today. I was privileged to meet his wife, Frances, at an airport in Miami while she was on a short vacation with Rich. Rich and I went on to a book signing in Miami. Although I only spent a short time with Frances, I immediately understood why Rich chose her as a wife, a lovely and genuine lady. I never had the privilege of meeting his children, Erica and Lance, but Erica and I have texted back and forth several times. She told me she's writing a book, and when it's published, I hope to have her on my show as a guest author. When you reach my age of 81, you seem to spend a lot of time mourning relatives and friends who have passed away before me. It's never easy to accept the death of someone you love and care about, but as mere mortals, we have no control over it. In our journey through life, we meet a lot of acquaintances who positively influence our lives, but we only get to call a precious few friend. Rich will always be in my heart, my prayers, and my memory. I know he is in a better place, and the fact that he is there makes it even a better place. Until we meet again, old friend, rest in peace and God bless you. Here is a song that both Rich and I liked when we served in South Korea. It was played a lot for all the homesick GIs, soon by the Four Seasons. It's the B-side of the Four Seasons hit, Ain't That a Shame? Most of us favored the B-side because it held true to the doo-wop sounds we loved. My first YouTube video of Bios to Books, Rich was my guest author. as it was our first time navigating through YouTube and StreamYard, it's a little choppy at times, but I still think you will enjoy it. Thank you for watching this tribute to Richard Marcano. Rich, I think we should start by you telling the folks a little bit about yourself. You know, your roots and your life's journey, where you were raised.
All right, I was born and raised in the Bronx, New York. Not much to talk about there. I mean, maybe in the future we'll have something to say about that. But I joined the Air Force when I was 17, similar to your experience, I guess. And then when I got out of the Air Force, I went into insurance investigations, got involved with frauds and things like that, and retired several years ago.
Like me, you're retired now.
Retired, fully retired.
Before we go on with any other questions, just to backtrack a little bit about your teenage years in the Bronx, I should mention to the people that we are working on a book about that time. It's fiction, of course, but it will be based on a lot of your experiences growing up in the Bronx, and it's tentatively titled right now, No More the Rebel. We don't know necessarily if that's going to be the final title, but it is the title we're working with when we work on that part of your life story back when you were a teenager. I just thought I'd throw that in.
Okay.
Where do you live now, Rich?
I'm living in Brooklyn. I married a girl from Brooklyn, and we live in actually a neighborhood she grew up in.
Oh, that's interesting. So she's familiar with where you live, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Now, how about children? You have any children?
I have a son who's living in California now, and my daughter.
Okay, my next question is kind of simple. At what age did you get the bug for writing?
Basically it was when I got out of the Air Force. I don't know why I had this feeling like I had to write, and I wrote poetry mostly. I started to try to write short stories, but it was tough at that time. So I wrote a lot of poetry, and I actually had one that was accepted by some publishing place. But in my travels, I lost contact. I never knew what happened with the darn thing.
It could be out there, and you don't even know about it.
Yeah, could be.
well, you did actually write some poetry for our first book, which we'll have you talk about in a minute. So, but just so people know, there's a couple of lines of your poetry in the first book.
Right.
Can you remember the first thing you ever did write? Not published, but just wrote.
It was just a short love poem. I don't remember it verbatim or anything like that. I probably still have it around, gathering dust someplace with my old photos and things like that. I didn't throw most of them out. I somehow saved them somewhere.
Yeah, that's what happens. When you get our age, there's a lot of things gathering dust.
Including us.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of your favorite authors that you like to read?
I like Alexander Dumas, Victor Hugo, Louis L'Amour. I guess I lean toward the French for some reason.
I see that, yes. I know. Yeah. Well, Louis L'Amour is a great Western writer, right? I mean, did a lot of famous stuff. I think he did Hondo, didn't he? The one that was made into a movie?
That was the first one that was made a movie, right?
Yeah, I thought so, yeah. What are your favorite genres?
I like historical fiction. I'm a big history buff, as you are, I believe.
Right.
And I lean toward historical fiction.
So you would like somebody like James Michener that did Centennial and some of those South Pacific and some of that stuff.
He's a tough read, though. That first chapter, if you can get by the first chapter, it's good. But the first chapter is really drawn out.
Yeah, he's very detailed in what he starts his books. Yes, I agree with you there. Now, the name of the genre of the first book you wrote, or I should say in this case co-wrote with me, how did that journey all begin? We're talking about Butterfly Wish. Butterfly
Wish, of course. Well, when we hooked up again after some years being out of contact, you had, many conversations. You mentioned that you were writing screenplays, and this was one of the screenplays you had written. And
we weren't doing too good with that. I wasn't getting
any bites.
Many bites from Hollywood, yeah. It's very difficult to break into that particular
Frank Capra.
Yep.
But Yeah, so after some time, I thought it was great. I really thought it was a great screenplay to me, and I said, why not convert it to a book and see maybe if the book sells, somebody will see it as a movie in the future. I don't know, but the book rewrite was a big job.
It was a big job. Thanks for a lot of your help with the research and everything. I know when we sat down to have a couple of beers when we met in Las Vegas, that it took you a little while for you to convince me to do that because it was certainly foreign to me. I had never tried that, and it was foreign to you as well. So, but it was an interesting challenge. Like you said, it was a tough job, but it worked out. I think we did a good job on it. I think we told the story like we wanted to tell it, and it's done fairly well. I mean, we haven't broken any records with it, but it's done fairly well, and people expressed a lot of interest in it. I think we have 27 to 28 Amazon reviews on it, which for a first book isn't bad. So,
I think largely, almost everyone was a positive review.
yes, I think everyone was. I think the least we had was a 4-star, but everyone, yeah, was fairly good. So that makes us happy too. But I'm sure
Yeah.
as it stays out there, we'll probably get hit a few times with negative, well, not negative reviews, but less than 4 or 5 stars. It happens. Or even the best writers get that. So, but yeah, I'm pleased with where it's gone so far. Now, let's talk a little bit about the second book we worked on, what genre it is in, and the name of the book.
That's the Twice Upon a Time. It's a paranormal romance.
Is that your buddy there, meowing?
Yeah, he's gonna get rid of this guy. He's gonna jump up on my shoulders again.
That's
He's
okay. That's okay.
a little Siamese cat.
Right.
Uh, um, yeah, that was. I think you said that was based on an idea that your wife had somewhere.
Well, actually, I threw it to my wife first before we ever even talked about it, and I kind of said I'm kind of afraid to do that because I've never done anything like that. I'm not good at paranormal stuff. At least I didn't think I was, and but she kept bugging me about it because I wanted to go to the next story we were both working on and shy away from that. But she kept bugging me about it. So finally, I just said, you know what, we'll give it a shot, and that's when we started working on that. Uh, and Twice Upon a Time isn't doing bad. It's been out for a while now, not quite as long as Butterfly Wish, but I think it's getting some good reception. We'll have to wait. It's still kind of early in the game for that one, but we'll see what happens with that. Now we're talking about working on a third book that we both were worked on, and it's not out yet, but maybe you want to talk about that a little. I'm talking about Tasting Raindrops.
Raindrops, right? Yeah, that's another fiction. I guess a romantic fiction. I guess you
Right,
would call it.
right, exactly.
It's kind of taken from some of your background when you were in the Air Force in Ohio, I believe, right?
That's correct. Even though we say it's fiction, just like your story about the Bronx, a lot of it's based on things I remembered and what I experienced when I was stationed in Ohio when I was in the Air Force. So yes, it's based on a lot of that. But again, it's fiction that we've expanded on, so to speak, from my experiences in Ohio. Do you have any aspirations to see one of our books turned into a movie?
Well, definitely Butterfly Wish. I mean, and I'm not. It's not that it's me alone. I mean, other people have said that have reviewed the book that they thought it would make a good movie. I would love to see it made a movie. I think it'd be terrific. I really do.
And it's easy for me to see that because, like we said before, I started out writing a screenplay about it, and
Right.
I had one of my grandsons who read it said that it reads like a movie. And I don't know what that means, but I guess it's a compliment. It reads like a movie. So I would like to see it made into a movie too. And who knows, maybe someday it'll happen. I guess my next question would be, what's been the most difficult part of marketing and selling the books to you?
Yeah, that's it's difficult on a limited budget. It's not easy. We have to compete with known authors and the big publishing houses. So you have to go different route to get that advertising across and hope that people pick up. And I mean, Twitter and Facebook are something we've used, and there's other places. What was it? Book Baby is
Well,
our
book, yeah,
publishing house, so they've helped out.
right. And there are other, like you say, you have Instagram, Goodreads. There are other places you can go, and there's also places you can go that you could pay nominal fees to. Like I'm trying to think of some of them. Uh, Vinny's book, Jenny's book, Awesome Books. There's a lot of places like that for a minimal fee you can advertise with them, market with them too. There's of course expensive places to go that cost quite a bit of few $100s, but I assume most of the people that are watching this have limited budgets like us, so they don't take that option too often. But yeah, it's tough. Like you say, you're competing with the big publishing houses, and it's tough to get the play that they get, so to speak. But you have to take it one step at a time.
Sure.
What advice do you think you'd offer people out there who have a desire to write a book but are afraid to try?
I would just say go ahead and start writing. You never know where it's going to lead. I mean, you have to do it. Uh, you never know what talent you may have in you that it hasn't come out yet unless you try. I mean, I was hesitant to try, writing the poetry years ago, and my people I know liked a lot of that stuff, and I was hesitant to show anyone. But hey, you never know. You don't know what talent is within you until you make the effort.
I always remember an English teacher I have saying to me, because I used to tell him I'm terrified even trying to do something like writing. And he says, well, the thing is, you got to remember, if you don't experience failure, you'll never experience success. And I thought about that. I kind of weighed it in my mind, what he was saying, and it's kind of right. If you're afraid to fail, you're never going to succeed. You got to keep going at it and trying.
That's with anything in life.
Exactly.
That's true, yeah.
Exactly. Now, do you think self-publishing is the way to go for some young person struggling to get started? Or should he wait and hope that a publishing house or a literary agent will pick him up?
You might be waiting forever. I think it's the only way to go.
Yeah.
People, new writers and people like us, it's the only way to go, really.
I think I agree with you that. I mean, it's a tougher route. It's always better to get a literary agent representing you and going to a big publishing house. It's like pie in the sky, though, today, because it's so competitive out there. So I kind of agree with you. I think start with the self-publishing and see where you go from there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rich, for allowing me to interview you. Hopefully, we have at least generated some interest for self-published authors. Self-publishing is a tough and lonely road to travel, but when you finally reach your destination, hopefully it will prove a worthwhile trip.